Hello and welcome to MashTalk, Mashable's Google Plus Hangout, where today we are talking about the Microsoft Surface Pro 3. I'm Ryan Lytle, Social Projects Manager here at Mashable, and joining me today is Pete Paschal, our tech editor. Hello, Pete. Lance Fulanoff, our chief correspondent. Hello, Lance.
Hello.
And Christina Warren, our senior tech analyst.
Hi there.
Hello. So, we are talking, like I said, about the Surface Pro 3. Earlier this week, Microsoft unveiled their latest tablet. So we're going to be talking about the event. We're talking about specs. We're talking about how it's going to perform on the market, and a few questions that you all have in the community. If you do have questions, throw them in the Q&A app here on Google+, or tweet them with the hashtag MashTalk. So Pete and Lance were actually at the event earlier, and Christina was obviously following along and sharing a lot of her thoughts during the event. So I wanted to open up first what you guys thought about Microsoft's event, how it compared to previous events, and whether you were impressed or any thoughts like that. So Pete, Lance, I'm going to throw it to you guys first.
Well, I thought the event was fine. I mean, in terms of a tech event and how it was run and the length overall was good. I was not super thrilled about how they teased the event because they said it was a small gathering, which I guess arguably it was. Smaller gathering for product announcements. But that seems like an intentional mislead into fooling everybody, including myself, that they were going to reveal a Surface Mini. And Christina wrote an excellent piece about why that would have been a mistake anyway, and that it was a bad idea. So it's good they did this Surface Pro 3, which is a fine product. But as events go, it's good. Something I put up on Google Plus last night, and I wanted to just give sort of a shout out to Panos Panay, just because I think, for whatever you think of the Surface, this is a guy who is so passionate about what he's doing, and the mission that he has is designing and building these high performance tablets in this new category for Microsoft. I mean, he's a really good showman, and he really sells it up there. And you could really sort of taste the passion as he was sort of describing the Surface Pro 3, and the new features like the new hinge and that kind of thing. He was very good at it. So as an event goes, it was fine. I just not quite what we expected.
I'm stuck on tasting the passion. Tastes like what, I don't know, but
tasting the passion with Panos.
I agree.
Passionate Panos.
I spoke to Panos after the event, probably at a point where he was at his lowest ebb, because all of that energy, he doesn't just tell you about the product. You feel that he's living it and he's excited, and then he has to talk to everybody afterwards and basically repeat himself and try and explain himself. But I thought he made a good case, because as Pete said, with the absence of a Surface Mini, there was a lot of confusion, like why was it small? Why didn't you deliver this product? And whether or not they changed course late in the game, I have to say that Panos made a really compelling argument for why they went big. They really, they went full bore productivity with a device that is essentially no compromises when it comes to Windows productivity, and that says something important about Microsoft as a company. And by the way, one of the things that's important to mention is that Satya Nadella, the new CEO of Microsoft, did kick off the event. So this was an important event. This wasn't a sideshow. This was the main event with the guy who's leading the company standing up there and explaining his strategy.
But Lance, it was so small.
It was small. It was intimate.
But you guys, you're forgetting, okay, so Panos was clearly like the main star of the show, right, and he did a great job. But we're forgetting about the secondary star of the show, and that would be our good friend Joanna Stern from the Wall Street Journal, who was mentioned like 15 times.
Joanna.
Yeah, I felt awkward. I felt a little uncomfortable for her, but she was a good sport about it.
Just so you know, I don't know if Pete heard this, but basically they asked her, Joanna's been doing tech reporting for a long time. She's influential and smart, and I know her well. But she was not entirely certain that she was going to the event. And Microsoft asked her repeatedly, "Are you going?" She's like, "Yeah. Are you going to be on time?" "I think so." And when she got there, they had a reserved seat for her up front because she was part of the stagecraft without even knowing it. And that's not that, last time Panos did that, as soon as he had the Surface 2, this was last time, he started handing it to people. That's kind of his thing. So we shouldn't have been all that surprised, but it was also kind of a peek behind the curtain of how they work things. They knew who they were going to use, and whether or not she knew it, they did everything in their power to ensure that she'd be there.
Yeah,
I remember with the Surface 2 event, it was Mary Jo Foley who got a little bit targeted.
Right.
And I think they didn't, I don't know if they called her, because she's pretty much guaranteed to show up.
yeah. So if Mary Jo's not there, then there's a problem.
Yeah. So
I would love to know what their plan B was if Joanna hadn't showed up. But so we talked about the event. Yeah. So we've talked about the event a little bit. So let's actually talk about the specs and what you like, what you don't like about the Surface Pro 3. Lance, Pete, I know you both have the devices on you. So Lance, go ahead.
Yeah. So, like I said, this is an Intel Core actually, I don't know if this is the i3 or the
It's the i5.
i5, which is midstream, but it's a core device, meaning that this is Intel full-blown Windows 8, 8.1, not RT. No compromises on what you can and can't run. Up to 8 gigabytes of RAM, up to a ½ terabyte of storage space. But with all of that, still light, still incredibly light, really. I think it's with, what is it, about a pound and, would you say it's a pound, is it a pound and 3/4?
Yeah.
Roughly a pound and 3/4, 12 inches of screen real estate here. So that's, if you were to hold, it's larger than an iPad, it's larger than Surface 2. My biggest criticism of the hardware, which I actually love, is that the really critical keyboard that does not ship with it. This is $129 by itself, and I don't see how you can have this device without the keyboard. That's what makes it special, is that this is a convertible device. It can be an effective tablet, but you're going to get so much more out of it with this really great keyboard, which, by the way, he invented a new word at this event, and people gave him a lot of trouble for this. Panos invented the word, or maybe Microsoft did, called lappability. And I'll try and show you here something that is new to this. So if you see there, what you end up with is a new way of attaching this keyboard to the device. Now, what that means, and this is, again, something I love, is that it is much more stable on the lap. I'm going to be taking this with me to the code event next week and taking probably all of my notes on it. I won't have a table in front of me, so having that is really important. And, of course, there's the pen. The pen, by the way, is included in the base price. Base price was $799.
But the keyboard is the funny thing is the keyboard is the holster for the pen. So you kind of need.
Yes, well, but you can,
straight around.
But this is magnetized, or you can this is magnetized, so I can actually, it'll stay there.
Yeah, but that's gonna fall off. You'll lose that if it's.
Oh, it'll never fall off. Yeah, that's not bad actually.
Yeah, I like it. I pretty much agree with most of what you said. I think the lappability, isn't too bad. This is the hinge is like what was missing sort of from previous Surfaces. So this one, you have this full. I'm trying to show it. Full 150 degrees.
Oh yeah.
And it's sort of any angle within that. It's sort of like you have to go about 30, then otherwise it'll just tip over. Whereas I've actually got the Surface 2 here, the Pro 2, and it's got the 2, 1. Here it is. It's like 1 and then 2, and that's it. Which was better than the Surface 1, which only had 1. But
right. Pete, do you recall what he called this angle, with the extreme angle?
He called it like his daughter's name, something like Aurora mode or something like that.
There's something that it's actually really good for drawing because you end up with it much flatter. One thing I neglected to mention that one of the designers told me, and I did notice that this is quite stable on your lap, is the way this is designed. If you were to slice this open, you'd see half of it is for battery and half of it is for the motherboard. So they've actually tried to balance it out so it doesn't get too wobbly.
So
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'm actually going to switch topics real quick, so Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using it for the past couple days. I like it a lot. I honestly think Lance is dead on about the keyboard, and really, I mean, they should just ditch the touch cover already and just start including the type cover in all of these, because I think, you know, someone told me, and this is pretty unofficial, but that they're basically the type covers outselling the touch cover something like 4 or 5 to 1.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Pete,
Well,
can
that's
you?
pretty terrible.
Pete, can you explain the difference between the two? Because I'm not sure everyone understands.
The type cover is what we have here, and it's basically the buttons are actual buttons. All the keys are, you know, they have they go in. You know, there's that response. Whereas the type cover, they're not actually buttons, so it's all just a surface, a touch-sensitive.
It's like
surface.
Printed. It's basically printed.
It actually
It's
makes it a
capacitive.
lighter accessory. It's just that it's very weird to type on at first.
It's kind of like those old membrane keyboards, if you remember those at all, like from a Speak and Spell. It's not that different. It's a little bit more accurate than the Speak and Spell, but like not that much more accurate actually.
Yeah, I thought I might have one here, but I don't. Yeah, the difference, as soon as I started traveling with the original Surface and Surface 2, and I had the option of using the actual type cover, I switched immediately because it's night and day. This, by the way, the other really great thing, and they introduced this one version back, is on the Surface 2, this is backlit. So you work, you know, in the dark, and so this is a... You know, whatever you think of Microsoft and their tablet efforts, the engineering feat of this product is really something to be admired.
So we got a question on our Google Plus page actually about Lance. I know you had brought up the base price of the Surface Pro 3 being $799, and Liam Riley said he's a little skeptical about that price point. You know, what are your thoughts about that as kind of the base price for the Pro 3?
Well, I do wish they included the keyboard in that price, but it's still a good price. So, you know, you're probably not going to buy the $799 model because that is a Core i3 chip, and I've always found the Intel Core i3s are a little bit too slow for my needs. Core i5 is a good sweet spot, usually enough power, makes people happy, but that's going to raise the price probably about $100 right off the bat. But it's worth it. You're still within range of MacBook Air. The prices are roughly comparable, and you have to even with the keyboard, the price is going to be roughly comparable. Basically, if you do like $999 MacBook Air, Christina, that's what.
That spec is actually identical to the $999 Surface Pro 3. So the Surface Pro 3, which is an i5, 4 gigs of RAM, 128 gigabyte SSD, is the same price as the MacBook Air with the same specs. One important thing to know about the $799 unit, and the reason I would say that most people probably shouldn't go for that, in addition to the i3 being not as responsive, the i5 is a really good chip, and my experiences with the i3 are the same as yours, Lance, is that it only has 64 gigabytes of storage. Now, a lot of that, and you know, Pete's argument, and this is true to a certain extent. You know, Microsoft has really integrated really well with OneCloud, and that's not OneCloud, OneDrive, and that's really true. But having said that, Windows 8.1 itself, because this is a full laptop, takes up an enormous amount of space. So you're going to get started with much less room to expand. Yes, you can add like a micro SD, but that's not going to be as fast, and you're not going to want to do that. So I think that for the $200, getting the faster processor and a hard drive that can actually be comparable to what if you're going to use this as a regular laptop, you're going to want to do. The $200 price difference, I think, the $999 thing is really that's really the starting point.
And the other thing, just to keep in mind, because it's not entirely apples to apples
here.
No,
it's not.
Yeah, exactly. This is a touch screen, and
it's high resolution.
Right, that's the other thing. It's high resolution. If you split the screen in half, I was told it basically gives you 2 4x3 screens. What that means is that since this is this device is multitasking. I can't quite get it right. I always drag it wrong. But basically, you could drag it so you'd have 2 screens. So there's that, and it's a touch screen.
Pete has it.
Yeah, you're not going to get on a MacBook Air a touchscreen. I don't know if you'll ever get that because that's really counter to Apple's strategy. That's not something I want to do. So it's a true hybrid device for that price.
And the resolution, frankly, I think is even more important than like putting the touchscreen is great, but I think just the fact that you have 2160 by 1440 versus 1440 by 900, there's a big difference there. So you have almost Retina class basically.
One thing to keep in mind at the desktop level, they scale up to 1440 by 960 for readability. So, which is something that's also done on the MacBook Air side. So, but when you're working in apps, you're working in the so-called Windows Design or old Metro mode, you're going to be at that full resolution.
Yeah, and Pete, walk us through a little bit. This is kind of the discussion of the lapability that you're kind of showing, kind of the setup you have.
I'm lapping it up here, yeah. It's good. I mean, here we go. Like, it's on my lap, obviously. Hope the angle's good. And, you know, as I showed with this hinge, you can go pretty much any angle you want. You know, we're all different sizes, so that's really crucial.
Right. Try crossing your legs.
Yeah,
because they say also. No, actually, it works all right. I've tried it. If you cross your legs and have just like one leg under it, it holds up okay.
Yeah, it didn't work for my legs when I was trying it yesterday. But
you can still kind of do it. I mean, like here, and I got to decide where I'm going to do this. But I mean, the design aspect that you show, that the stability is so necessary, because I could never really do this with it off like that, but as it's attached like that, I can actually kind of even get by on one leg here.
Yeah, so, that really adds stability.
It is lappable.
Lappability. Say
it. The dictionary next year. Good job, Panos.
Yeah, it is lappable, but I will say, just from the little bit of time that I've spent with the device doing the lap test, it's not going to be as sturdy as what you would expect from a regular laptop. So it's definitely usable, but if you go into this thinking that you're going to have the same amount of support that you have like a MacBook Air or something else, you're not. That doesn't mean you can't use it, and that doesn't mean that it's not useful, but just be aware that if you're on an airplane where you don't have access to the tray table and you're just going to be on your lap the whole time and stuff is going to be moving around, you're probably going to, you know, feel like you have to kind of grab the back of the Surface a few times just to make sure that it's safe and secure.
Yeah, it's not. I agree, because it's like I've been in airplanes where I've had to actually kind of do this almost. So I hear you there, and you also don't on a laptop. I could go out this far. If I
exactly.
And here it's like, well, then I'm losing, you know, the knees. So you got to have to scrunch it in a little bit. I mean, like, you know, it's workable. More workable than past Surfaces. So
definitely.
Really good.
Good draw on it.
It's funny.
I would love to see them actually introduce, even if it would add weight, I would love to see them introduce a metal type cover.
A metal one?
Yeah.
Just because it's more laptop-like?
Exactly. It would add a little bit more weight. The reason I would say that was just to balance it out a little bit more, just so, not to travel with all the time, but just if you needed that like sense of support, you know.
I think it would be interesting for them to sort of do some market research and find out the other kinds of covers that they might like, because I actually really like this, but what I get your point, Christina, in that it's their choices. It's their choices on how this back feels,
right.
You know, the fabric and all that, and it's a very certain kind of design direction. Meanwhile, you know, this body, interestingly enough, is magnesium. So
right.
You know, if somebody wanted the full magnesium feel around, maybe that's, you know, that would be interesting to try. I also think it might be noisy, but that's just me.
One thing that sort of doesn't quite bother me, but it's a compromise, that they're inching ever closer to sort of like that laptop experience. But I mean, it's still this keyboard accessory, right? You can see it's not the chiclet style keys, which I really, really love on a true laptop. And the keyboard experience on any laptop, I mean, it's so key. I mean, like I say, this is good, but, you know, in terms of a full laptop, something you're going to spend all of your time on typing, it's still a sacrifice.
Right, and that's actually why I would like a metal keyboard attachment would be more for it to be the full key experience, like you said, the chiclet style, to have, you know, if I wanted to have it on my desk, you know, kickstand or not, like I would like to have that better laptop experience, because otherwise what you will do now, and what I assume most users would do, is if I were going to use this on my desk machine, I would either have it attached to a dock, or I would just have it connected to a Bluetooth keyboard and you know, on its stand. And that would be perfectly fine, but I don't think that I would want to use the type cover as my standard typing instrument unless it was one of those instances where I was at an event on the go and really needing to access something. You know, for day-to-day work, I would not use that keyboard. It's just not good enough.
Yeah. The touchpad is way better than it
Oh
used to
my God, the touchpad, so much
be.
better.
Astronomically better.
Yeah.
Down here, it's bigger. The last touch type cover it didn't really even have a click. It was just a
Oh,
tap.
it's horrible.
It was a really bad decision. This is much better. When you touch it, it clicks. It's one button, but you still have the left, right buttons in terms of the regions. So it's a lot better. But again, as you know, Christina and I were just discussing, I'm looking now over at my MacBook Pro touchpad, and it's bigger. You know, it's obviously has that.
It's glass. It's the best in the business.
I mean,
we are comparing it against the best, trackpad ever.
Yeah, and I also think, at some point, these direct comparisons to a pure play laptop aren't going to work. I mean,
sure.
The size of the MacBook Air, depth-wise, it's deeper, so they have more room to work with.
Actually, it's not deeper. It's the same depth, but it's shorter. So
well, I'm not sure. We may be talking about the same thing, but I have an Air here. So let's see. So if I put the keyboard, if I have the Air and I put the keyboard and I put it, let's see. There's definitely more. There's a little bit more space there. So I think that there is. And you'd end up working, when you're working on these designs, it gets down to quarters of an inch, millimeters. But
here's the compromise. Like, here's what you're getting, though.
Right.
The MacBook Air cannot do this.
Exactly.
And?
Oh, yeah, if you pull hard enough and rip it apart.
All I did was tap the pen as they showed at the demo.
Oh, that's a great feature.
It is.
And it pulled up OneNote, and now,
you can write a note.
Yeah, and by the way, that doesn't unlock it, so you shouldn't worry about security issues. It basically just allows someone to do a quick note, but you'll see there's an option there where you have to, if you want to do more, you have to unlock it. But one thing about some of the features we're talking about here, like this much improved touchpad, obviously on the Surface 2, the other device, it still has the old touchpad.
Right.
And I did ask them, like, you've got some of these great innovations here. Oh, like the new power supply, which we didn't talk about, which is 1,000 times better. These things may eventually trickle down to the other products, but they're starting at the high end, and then they'll see how people respond to them, and maybe they will trickle them down to the other stuff. But I think this is the product that they're going to put all the marketing efforts behind and the time.
Without a doubt. One question I did have for you guys. So, they switched the pen technology. Previously, Microsoft was using Wacom stuff, and I happen to think that Wacom is the best in the business. But now they're doing something that they've built in-house. Now, I had some issues using the pen with some of the built-in apps. I'm sure it was a settings thing. I didn't have enough time with it. But have you found, Lance, since you are the artist, have you found it to be any better or worse in terms of sensitivity than the Wacom stuff was?
So it works pretty well. I mean, I have fun with it. It's you can see that the line I don't know if you can see here, but lines have different weights on them because it has 256 levels. 256 levels of pressure sensitivity. You do have to. It's a Bluetooth pen. It's got 2 batteries inside of it. It's got a quadruple A in the heart of it, and 2 almost like watch batteries back here. And I think that in order to get the full functionality, you want to pair it up with the device. And I, for some reason, honestly had a little bit of trouble doing that. It was like the Bluetooth radio was so powerful. It was reading every single open Bluetooth device in the office, and it was kind of driving me a little crazy. Eventually, I got it to work, and you can see that I think that the drawing capabilities here, my drawing abilities are limited, but the drawing capabilities, it works.
No, you're quite good, but I was just curious how it compared to the Wacom stuff from the previous. I know they've done a lot more on the software side to enable more pressure sensitivity, but I didn't know if you'd noticed any difference in the accuracy.
No, and there's one other thing to note here, and I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'll try and bring it, let's say, close enough. if I get close, you'll see a little cursor appears.
Yeah.
So that's electrostatic coming out of the tip of it. So that's
passive, yeah.
Right, as opposed to this is not a passive capacitive pen, it's an active one, and that just gives it more power and more capabilities.
Yeah, and it also makes it really good for, if you're like me and you tend to lean your hand onto the side of whatever you're drawing, it has really good palm recognition. I did notice that. So somebody real quick, I was seeing this in the question, somebody's asking if you can dock it and if you can use it with multiple monitors, and the answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
The dock is $299. The dock, is it $299 or is it $199? The dock is expensive.
I think it might be $199.
It's $199. The dock is expensive, but that will give you more USB 3 ports, and it will give you access to hook it into multiple monitors. You can go to one 4K monitor. You go to one 4K monitor, but you could easily connect it to 2 monitors. So yes, you can use it with multiple displays.
Fantastic. All right, so we got our one of our user questions out of the way. So thank you for answering, Christina. And you're loading.
Right.
So we've talked a bunch about specs, but one of the things we did bring up earlier was the fact that Microsoft did not unveil a mini tablet. Christina, I know you had a piece on this, so I'm going to throw it to you. Why did Microsoft not launch another mini?
Well, I mean, this is what's really interesting, right? Like, we all thought that that's what they were going to announce. And whatever the truth is about when the decision was made not to launch the Mini, whenever that happened, and we're still trying to figure that out, ultimately Microsoft made it all about the Surface Pro 3. And from my perspective, all the messaging around this device, it's very clear from everything that Microsoft has said and everything that they've done when they show how the device is being used, that they are no longer targeting the Surface Pro 3 as an iPad competitor at all. It is a MacBook Air competitor. That is that is the device they were weighing it against. That's the device they were comparing it against. It is a MacBook Air competitor. My perspective is that, last week Lance wrote a great op-ed where he said, Microsoft, if you can't be every bit as good as the iPad mini, don't even bother. And I think that they agreed and said, if we're not going to be better or as good as the existing consumer tablet experiences out there, then we shouldn't even be in the game. And I think that they have to accept the fact, whether they want to maybe totally admit it or not, that they've lost the consumer tablet space, at least as it exists now. Nobody is buying Windows RT devices unless they're completely, marked down, and then those people are miserable. But it's true. And when you look at the number of apps that have been built for the Metro experience, that still lags significantly behind everything that's available for iPad. It even lags behind what's available for Windows Phone. So, I look at it as Microsoft has to realize that no, we're not ever going to be able to be in the same playing field as the iPad 1. But that doesn't mean that the only way that you can use a tablet is to use it the way that we use iPads. There's another option, and I think that's what they're doing with the Surface Pro 3, which is interesting, which is to say, what if we give you everything that you have in an Ultrabook or a high-end, thin, lightweight laptop, but you also have the ability to use it with a stylus. You have or a pen. You have the ability to use it with touchscreens, and you have the ability to do stuff with it like handwriting recognition and some of the stuff with art that you can't do with a traditional laptop. And I think that's a really interesting argument to make, that the tablet doesn't just have to be a consumer tablet. But I think that for anyone to argue that Microsoft seriously still thinks they can play in the consumer tablet space is kidding themselves. They've sold they have 1.8% market share. I think before BlackBerry stopped selling the Playbook, which was a disaster and a terrible device, I think they sold more than the Surface RT did. And the only reason that anybody bought the Surface RT at all was because they marked them down so much, took $1 billion loss, marked them down to nothing, and then people who didn't know better and then later regretted it were like, oh, I can just get this. But I think it's really telling that, the old ad used to be, oh, your iPad can't do this, and now it's like, okay, well, but the argument was always, oh, yeah, but you can't do what my iPad does. Now it's more about, can your laptop do this?
Well, one of the things that Panos pointed out during the event was that I think 90%, and I don't know where this stat came from, 96% of the people who had iPads or who had laptops had iPads in their backpack, or so vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa. This 90% of iPad owners also had a laptop. Which,
right, and very, especially for the crowd at the event, of course. We all did, but here's the key to Microsoft's success for the rest of 2014 with this product, and it was something I talked to Panos about. It's going after the back-to-school market.
Exactly.
Because the question for parents, for students who are of high school and college age is, what do I buy my kids? I think I'm supposed to get them a tablet, but I know they have to get work done. So is there a way to satisfy both of them and not break my budget? And parents are going to be very excited. So even though I am not thrilled about the idea of people getting a $799 Core i3 device, I actually think they'll still sell some of those because that's a very good price. You know, once they're going to pay. I'm sorry, they're going to pay ultimately $929 because they're going to buy with the keyboard, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna, so that's
a back-to-school bundle with Office 365 for a year and the keyboard. Sell it for $1,000
Right.
back to school. That's it.
Right, and I think they're going to do quite well in that area. You know, one device that theoretically does it all. So I think that's what we have to watch very closely for starting really mid-July.
Yeah, although it's kind of, honestly, you could still go cheaper with separate devices, you know, and this has sort of always been the problem with Windows 8 from the beginning, because you could get a cheap laptop for sub $500 and a cheap Android tablet for sub $200 and actually have a pretty good experience.
Well, if you buy a Kindle Fire HDX, I think, because those, but you won't get one for $279. Why am I echoing?
For the an Android tablet around $200, and still have a decent experience. I think there's some.
Yeah, no, you can get them for $7.
Yeah, I mean that's $229, but I mean that's, you know, someone will pay $229. You know, you're not getting bamboozled with an extra keyboard accessory. You might still have to shell out for the Office subscription. So this has kind of always been the problem with Windows 8 from the start, is that, you know, they're trying to have this hybrid experience when the dual experience has gotten cheaper and almost just as good, if not better. And in Android, you actually have a good app base.
That's true.
You at least have 1 million apps, and they're actually getting better. It used to be a lot of them used to be bad clones of iOS apps, but now, okay, you know, developers have acknowledged there is some money to be made on Android, and some of those apps are actually pretty good. So that's a problem. The thing is, like, separate from the back to school issue, I see the use case for this is when you go sort of higher end.
Yeah.
And whether it's Core i5, Core i7, and this does become your everything machine. You're basically someone who's working all the time. You have this plugged into a workstation, whether it's in a dock or not. I'm using it in my workstation now, and it's slipped in extremely well to my USB hub and my second monitor. And you have that in there all day, and then it's so light, you just slip it in your bag at the end of the day, every day. You come home, you have all your work right here in OneDrive or whatever, and, you know, basically you're using this for Netflix at night, you know, and it's got better battery life than the first Surface Pro, which was like 4 hours or whatever, but it'll last you most of the night and for whatever else you need to do, or even over the weekend. You don't even have to take in the charger, get a second charger. So that, to me, is kind of the use case for this, someone who is primarily using it for work, for productivity, but not in tablet form, or even really in laptop form so much. Because if you're mobile all the time, like, you would just get a laptop and some kind of tablet.
Who's buying their computers anymore? Desktops.
Okay. We're getting some feedback.
Pete, you're echoing.
Is it Pete?
Yes.
Hold on. We'll try. Test. Yep, Pete, it's you.
Pete? No, it's still.
No, look, Pete. Yep.
Pete.
It is Pete. Pete, I got you in control room. We're good.
I did want to say real quick, I see that somebody in the comment, Eric in the comments pointed out that students get a 10% discount off the Surface Pro 3, so that's the price of a cover. That's a good point, but I think Pete's larger point about how what you end up doing with the device is probably actually still more geared towards the business user and the professional rather than the student. In a perfect world, the students would use OneNote and use it for their textbooks and all kinds of other things, but in reality, that's not exactly how things work, especially when, you know, It's just not. It's some realities. It's some versions of reality, but it's not a lot. So I think that the real primary target and the people who, like for instance, I'm a Mac user. I'm not the target audience for Surface Pro 3. However, if I were looking for a Windows laptop and I wanted to buy one tomorrow, it would be at the top of my list to investigate. It would be, in my top 3 choices. So I think that's maybe the disconnect.
Yeah. Okay.
How's the audio now, guys?
Good.
You sound crystal clear. Thank you. Okay, so we have roughly about 5 minutes left, and we have to get to one of the most important topics. We have a question, and I know that Surface Pro 3 they're kind of marketing as it's going to replace the laptop. So is it actually going to replace a tablet or replace a laptop, excuse me, on the market? And in general, do you feel like the Surface Pro 3 is going to be competitive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for Windows, for people who like Windows, still a lot of people out there, although the jury is out on Windows 8.1 or Windows 8. I mean, I'm fine with it. I can use it. I like it. But I talk to old school Windows users all the time, and they are actively running away from it. They are still going for Windows 7. So that is a stumbling point. But if you're looking for a device that works without compromises, that gives you all the tools and features that you need in Windows with good power, excellent portability, 9 hours of battery life, basically you're going to be looking at this versus an Ultrabook, and you go, well, wait a minute, this does something that Ultrabook can't. I can pull apart, so if I just want the tablet part, I don't want to carry the keyboard, I can do that. Some of them don't have touch screens. This has a touch screen by default. None of them have that kickstand feature. That doesn't exist. So,
actually, Sony has it.
Yeah, Sony does.
Oh, okay. I take that back. Sony does. Sony always does odd stuff. So
yeah, but Sony's also now out of the PC business, and BIOS will only be sold in Japan.
Right.
So
yeah,
and it was a bad kickstand.
So I think that this is a competitive product in the Windows space, and it is now. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in this versus the MacBook Air, because that is a full-blown OS with its own. Even though I like it, it has its own complications.
Sure.
And I still think now people can maybe make some kind of choice.
I would agree with that, but I would also say that the caveat that, and I haven't reviewed as many Windows laptops as you and Pete have, but I've reviewed enough of them, and even recent ones, that I would still say that I would prefer to use Windows 8 on a MacBook Air than I would on 90% of the Windows Ultrabooks and Windows machines out there, especially if you're the sort of user who doesn't love the Metro interface and isn't really sold on Windows 8, because you can kind of force it to be just in desktop mode. So I agree with you that I think that it might cause some people to ask that question, but I think it's going to be people who are more leaning towards Windows, but are looking at a MacBook Air because of other features and because of the design, and the design and the lightness is what's appealing to them rather than the OS. I think that if you're sold on Mac as an OS, there's nothing about the Surface that's going to bring you to that side. It's just not going to happen. But if you're kind of on the fence, and especially if you're really more in the Windows camp,
right.
I think it's really competitive. But I mean, like I said, I mean, I'm in no way do I think that this is an iPad replacement, but that's not what it's supposed to be.
No.
It's supposed to be a MacBook replacement. And the thing is that if I were a Windows user, this would be my top 3 to consider. And I think that especially, because as you said, you can do it so many things with it. But even if we ignored the touchscreen, even if you ignored the pen input, which are great features, but even if you took away from that, I think just the design and the fact that they've done something interesting with the screen, the resolution, and just the way that it's crafted, I think makes it a better Ultrabook type device than we've seen from anybody. I think the last time I saw anything this compelling from a craftsmanship point of view was the Vio Pro 11, I guess.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, you guys have touched on all of it. It's definitely, like, the Surface Pros have been the better of the Surface line, since the beginning. And there's a reason they're outselling the Surface 2 and the Surface RT. I mean, there is a real use case for it. But I don't think it's someone who necessarily wants that laptop. Like I say, I think it's It can be a laptop replacement for someone who isn't using it as a literal laptop a lot of the time. That works. It's definitely a PC replacement. What it is, and this was at the end of the presentation, and Christina mentioned this, that when Panos Panay had the scale, and it was like, oh, it's actually lighter than the MacBook Air, but really, it's lighter than the MacBook Air and the iPad Air, and he put them both, and it's then you have a huge thing, and it's like, well, wait a minute. No. This is not an iPad experience you get on this tablet, which it is a tablet, but I mean,
but it's not a consumer tablet.
No.
It's not a consumer tablet. You're not getting those apps. You're not getting the same experience. So that is a sort of the false promise here. So it's not going to be this thing where you have this machine and you don't need either of these machines anymore. But again, there's a real use case for something this light and this powerful. So it's going to do well. It's basically taking the Surface Pro and it's making it better. It's augmented it.
Yeah, and so that is all the time we have for today. I want to do a quick thank you to Pete, to Lance, and to Christina for sharing their expertise as always. Thank you all for watching here on Google Plus and on YouTube and on Mashable.com, for all of you who asked questions in the Q&A, for those who are tweeting on the MashTalk hashtag. Keep the conversation going. Tell us using the hashtag MashTalk whether you're interested in getting the Surface Pro 3, why or why not. And we will see you guys all again very soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.